It is also a project, it is a project concept that cannot be found anywhere else across Europe. It is extremely pertinent, it is central to the way universities develop in the future, because universities will growingly have to demonstrate they are both relevant but also poignant they at their fingertips, they know about and they work with communities to address those issues of communities that are most important to the communities in which they're based. And the importance of that is to continue to demonstrate why universities are relevant to their local communities, not just to the vast academia across the world, as we very often tend to look at. This is why UniverCity has brought in partners from 3 different countries in Europe to test a new model, to learn from the experience of Plymouth University in the UK, to adapt to local issues, to local aspects of, and to pilot the first schemes, then to scale up. This is our ambition, no less than reach many more university teams over the 36-month life cycle of this project. I am absolutely delighted and excited. British Council's role is very often to find those excellent examples shareable from the UK and discuss them with other countries. And we have found in the Community Research Awards, a really brilliant example of excellence that we're very excited to be sharing with all of our local academic communities. And without further ado, this is where I will stop, because everything else that matters will be given to us over the next 3 days by Alice and Melanie from Plymouth University. And now it is with great pleasure that I am inviting Alice and Melanie to take over. I will be here lurking, but it's your session.
Thank you. I'm really, really pleased to be here today to talk to you about the Community Research Awards. So we have 3 sessions this week. The first session today is the introduction to the Community Research Awards. And then tomorrow, we're going to look at some of the process, some of the ways we ran it. And then on Thursday, we'll be looking at some of the documentation that we found really useful. I've been at the university for 11 years. And one of the first projects I worked on was the Community Research Awards. So it's very close to my heart and something that I'm always very keen to talk about and share. So I just wanted to share some of the quotes we had from some of the charities we worked with for the Community Research Awards. So you can see just how important it was to them. So you can say the first charity who were historian, they said it was 12 years, it was one of the best things they'd ever done. And they talked about how great it was that university was giving something back to the city and to the people of the city, and how important it was to them that they could use our expertise in research, because they didn't have those skills, but it helped them move forward so much. Very important project locally, very popular with the community, and it was started off our whole journey into community engagement and a whole range of new research areas. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the University of Plymouth, because I think it's important to understand where we are, what kind of university we are, and how it worked for us. And then you can start thinking about how it might work at other universities. We're going to talk about why we think community embedded research is so important, introduce you to the model, talk about some of the benefits and the impact that we found, but also some of the challenges. And there may be different challenges in your university, but I think if you can at least understand some of our challenges, it might help you think about some of the things to be aware of. Then Melanie's going to talk to you and show you some examples of previous projects that we've done, some of the research projects, and we've got a short film to just show you that we did a few years ago on some of the projects and some of what's happened to them since. And there'll be opportunity for questions and answers if we've got time, or otherwise we can pick them up either tomorrow or on Thursday, or you can send them through the chat function or email us any questions and we'll continue to keep doing them. So for anybody who knows England a little bit, Plymouth is right down in the very far southwest. I'm very lucky to live down here. This is probably one of the warmest bits of England, right on the sea. We're quite a big university by English standards, so we're 15th largest university. There's 165 universities. About 18,000 students, give you a feel for our scale, and we're very research active, so we pride ourselves on the amount of research that we do. We have 3 faculties: science and engineering, health, and arts and humanities and business. That's a picture of our university. We're right in the middle of the city, so our geography means we're very connected to our city, or at least we should be. We're next to the train station, we're next to Marks and Spencer's, so we are right there in the middle. So our strategy, and I think it's important to think about how community embedded research might sit in your strategy. Our strategy is around challenges, global challenges. How can we impact our research on global challenges? But also, how can we support our staff to be connected and ambassadors? And how can we benefit society through all the work we do? So we try and pull all of that together in our community embedded approach. And that's been something that's been driving us forward as a university. So we're one of the top 25 institutions globally in the impact ratings. We're particularly strong on all our research around marine research and teaching. We do a lot of research around the quality of water, marine plastics, sustainability. They're big areas of research for us. We've won the Queen's Anniversary Prize 3 times, and 2/3 of our research is ranked world leading. So we consider ourselves a strong university with lots of research strengths, and we're constantly trying to balance that with our community embedded research as well. So we try and bring those two things together. So why did we decide to develop this closer relationship with the community? So the UK government has been pushing universities for the last 5-10 years to think about how they make the city or the region where they're based a better place to live. So all of our policies that come out for universities push us in this direction and encourage us to think about our civic responsibility and what we can do as an employer, as an organisation, to benefit our local area. We also think our local area provides an example for us to think about global issues. So if we're thinking about research in marine, for example, we've actually got marine on our doorstep, and we can go and do research in our local seas and try and think about the quality of our water. If we're doing research around older people and maybe dementia, we've got lots of older people living around our local area who could be part of our research. So we're constantly trying to think about global issues and how locally we can work with our area to bring those two things together. We also think understanding people and behaviour helps inform research agendas. So often we're thinking about how we can improve the world and deal with these global issues, and we know that understanding people might be a major thing. So if we're thinking about recycling, we know that people's behaviour is very important to understand that. So we believe that community are key partners in many of our research areas, and actually by talking to the community, they come up with some great ideas on how we can do things differently. Finally, because of where we're located in England, because we're right down in the far west, we're about 4 hours from London. Many of our staff and students live locally, so about 2/3 of our students come from our local area. So they want us to improve the area for them because they live there, their families live there, and they want to stay there to work. So to be a good employer, we think it's important that we constantly think about our community and improving. So all of those things come together for us to try and think about it. We also want to be a distinctive university. We want to be a little bit different from other universities so that we stand out. So we introduced the Community Research Awards. It was introduced by our Vice-Chancellor, and she was very keen to introduce a scheme that connected us as strongly as we could to the community. So she launched, we called it the Vice-Chancellor's Community Research Awards. So we launched those about 11 years ago now when I first started at the university, and we ran them for 4 years as a starting point for all our community engaged research that we now do. So the idea of the scheme is very easy, really. It's about the community coming up with ideas for research topics and then matching them with academic researchers, and then the two sides working together to try and find solutions. Behind all of that is quite a complicated way of running them, and they're quite time consuming, but we had such great impact. They were something we're very, very proud of. So the purpose of the Community Research Awards was all around connecting our researchers to the community in a way we hadn't done before. Again, going back to the idea of trying to have real world problems and trying to find solutions with our local people, helping improve our city, and helping improve the well-being of our city, and becoming known as a university that does a lot of civic engagement and community engagement, and being a little bit different from other universities that might not do this. So we wanted to become known as a university that's very connected out to external partners. So I'm going to briefly just take you through the approach. the first step was we developed some broad research priorities. So we decided that we would choose some priorities and we would match them to some of our areas of expertise. So we're very strong on aging research, environment, health, culture and arts. So we developed some broad research priorities so that we didn't get people asking about research in housing, which we don't do much of. So we got some priorities together. And then we invited communities to suggest research questions that matched these areas. So we went out to them and we asked them, these are areas we're particularly interested in. Have you got some research questions or some problems you're aware of that you would like our researchers to work with you on? And then we held some workshops on campus and we invited community onto campus to spend the day with us, coming to workshops and discussing some of the ideas they'd come up with. We then matched the ideas and the community groups to academics and talked to our academics about which ones we thought would be really good research projects. We asked them to work together to develop a proposal, and we developed a selection panel made up of various people across the university, some professional services, some central services, some academics, and an external person. And then we asked them to select the strongest 5 applications. Some years it was more than 5, it was 7 or 8, depending on the funding. And then we provided funding for the year to run the research project. And we hosted quite a large, fancy award ceremony to really celebrate the opportunity of bringing these different groups together. And then we monitored them for the year and then fed back on them after that year to see what the impact had been, and supported them throughout the year to take the project forward. So that's the basic model. Behind that is obviously lots around how do you know who your community is? What are your broad research priorities? How do you bring people on campus and encourage them to come into the university? How do you persuade your academics to do this? Why would they want to do it when they've got other research projects they're working on? What motivates them? How can you encourage them to do this? So there's lots of kind of decision making all the way through, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow and hopefully help some discussion around how you might do it at a different university and talk about some of our experiences. But the basic model was to do it that way. Just a little bit about the impact of the scheme at our university. I think there was expected impact and then there's the additional impact. So when we did it originally, we expected the main impact to be that we would have new connections and partnerships. We would reach out to our community. We would understand our charity groups, our social enterprises, our community groups much better than we did when we started it. And I think that was, for us, was the main impact we were expecting. We also thought we'd probably get some really good press coverage. We could probably get some awards. It would be a really nice project that people would be interested in and would position our university well. So those were the 2 things that we thought we would probably get out of it. We thought maybe there might be a new area of research might come out of this, but we weren't sure whether the ideas would be good enough for that. And we were surprised to find that actually the new areas of research was a really important impact from this. We came up with all new ideas for research, which we've taken forward. And now 10 years later, we can see the impact of some of these research projects. What we didn't expect is it went on to lead to more successful, larger research grants. So actually from doing the Community Research Awards, some of our researchers have used this as just the first step in large research grants to look at some of the major areas that Mel will talk about in a minute. So, for example, we gave them a small amount of funding to look at an idea with a community group, but then they managed to get some large multi-million pound funding in the future. So we've had some success there. We also found some of the non-funded projects, some of the projects that didn't make the final 5 or 6, still went ahead because the academics had started working with the community. And they'd found that they wanted to work together anyway. So even though we didn't give them funding, they started doing some joint research without the funding. And that was great to see. We found that our academics were much more interested in the city and the region than they were previously. They understood some of the issues in our city. They understood more issues about what was worrying people. And they started showing more interest in some of the city meetings that were happened. And they got a little bit more involved. And that's continued through the last 10 years. So our academics now are much more involved in the city than previously. We found that some of the projects went on to influence national policy, and Melanie will talk about that a little bit later. So we have had Some of our projects have gone on to influence the Prime Minister's policy on dementia and have had a huge impact. And we also found that there was a faster development of academics who were at the start of their career. So some of the early academics got involved in this project, used it as one of their first research projects, and developed much more quickly than they thought they would be able to, and are now quite senior at our university in quite a quick time. So those are some of the impacts of that we had at the university, and I can talk about those in more detail, and so can Melanie later. So as always, there are challenges. Sadly, it's not always easy going just to get impact at a university. The first challenge we had was, how do we, within our university, sell the idea that although we want to be a global university, we also want to align with very local research in very small communities. So when we constantly tell our academics we want you to solve global problems like pollution and climate change, how do we make that match with our local research areas? And we had to think about how that sat in our strategy, and how we sold that back to our academics has been important to us. We also found we had a huge level of interest from the community, far more than we expected, lots of proposals, but yet we were only funding a small number, and we knew some people would be disappointed. So we needed to think about making sure our community felt that they still got something back from us for the effort they put in. We also found some of the community projects just weren't suitable as research projects. So for example, we had a lot of businesses, charities who wanted us to do business plans because they were in financial trouble, and they wanted us to help them find funding to go forward. It's not really the kind of research project we wanted to take on, and we had so many of them that we didn't feel we could really help them with it. So we had to think about how we dealt with that, and whether that was something we wanted to support with, or whether we just wanted to give some generic advice on that and not take it forward as a research project. So we didn't want to disappoint people, and we didn't want to build up so much expectation that people were disappointed, and that's something to balance. We also found some of the very small charities maybe only have one paid worker and some volunteers, find it difficult to work with large universities. They don't have the capacity really to work with us, and it takes them a long time to be able to do this. So we had to try and work a way, if we work with a small charity, how we can support them to work with a large institution. So there's a little bit of experience that we developed there about how that might work. Finally, one of the challenges is it's quite a time-intensive project to manage, particularly in our first year. It took a lot of time for us to work out the paperwork, how we work with our community, and the way forward. And it probably was more time-intensive than we'd expected. So we had to try and work out how the best way to manage that in our organisation was. And then we found the second year was much quicker, and we knew what we were doing, and was less time involved. So those were some of the challenges that came up that stood out to us, and your challenges may be different, but I think those would be some of the things that you might come across as you start thinking about how this might work in a university setting in your country.
Thank you, Alice. So yeah, I'm just going to run through a couple of examples of projects that were funded through the Community Research Awards at the university, and just focus in on what the aims of the research projects were and what the impacts have been, before sharing a short film that was produced by the university about a number of the research projects. So the Early Diagnosis of Dementia project was a partnership between Plymouth Alzheimer's Society, which is part of a national charity, and a number of academics with expertise in this area. And this included Ian Sheriff, who is the academic partnership lead for dementia. So the Plymouth Alzheimer's Society required research to gain a better understanding of the extent to which local dementia care services met the National Dementia Strategy objective around early diagnosis and support. So working together, the partnership really identified a number of key aims for the research, which really looked to explore the area of early dementia awareness and how best to train GPs in diagnosis of the symptoms. And the project also considered the type and quality of support offered by GPs to individuals and their carers. And this research project was a really huge success that has really acted as a catalyst for lots of positive developments and progress in this area. So really kind of resonating some of the things that Alice mentioned. Sort of 10 years after the project, the academic team, alongside others, have gone on to secure a number of large research bids that has resulted in lots of related activity being undertaken by the university. Another project funded through the awards involved monitoring plastic debris and seaweed on a local beach. So Parr Beach is located in the south coast of Cornwall. It's about 35 miles from Plymouth. It's a wide sandy beach with sand dunes and backs onto a nature reserve. And the Friends of Parr Beach are a group of volunteers with a common interest in looking after the beach. And they approached the university through the Community Research Awards because they wanted to understand why a large amount of plastic debris and seaweed accumulated on the beach, and also to identify ways in which the seaweed could be used as a sustainable resource. So academics with expertise in marine science were matched with the community group, and together they developed a research project that was successfully funded through the Research Awards. So the project really aimed to just use the university's expertise to understand why Parr Beach collects more rubbish and seaweed than other beaches, and also examine how the seaweed that accumulates on the beach could be used sustainably, for example, as fertiliser for community allotments. So in terms of impacts of the research project, through the project, the academic research actually trained the community group to undertake the monitoring of the plastic debris themselves. And the academic team really felt that this longer term involvement of the community group was one of the key added values of the project. And the researchers also developed a sustainable method for using the seaweed, and that obviously benefited the local community. And the research project was presented at the International Marine Debris Conference. So the next project focuses on legal advice to support gypsies and travellers. And just to highlight, in the UK, these communities self-identify as gypsies and travellers rather than as Roma, which I know is the correct terminology for such communities in mainland Europe. The Plymouth Citizens Advice Bureau, which is a charity which offers free confidential advice, were interested in finding out more about the legal advice needs of the gypsy and traveller community in Plymouth and how best they could respond to those needs, working in partnership with other advice agencies in the city. So academics from the School of Law with particular expertise in the area of gypsies, travellers and Roma worked alongside the Citizens Advice Bureau to develop the research project that was successfully funded. And the project really aimed to kind of firstly establish what the advice needs of gypsies and travellers in Plymouth were, identify the barriers to providing advice by support agencies, and understand better how gypsies and travellers could be encouraged to use advice services, and also to inform best practice and advice provision within the region. So in terms of impacts of the project, the research was presented to an interagency regional forum. It also contributed to the success of various funding bids around gypsy and traveller inclusion. And a training event was also provided, which focused on working with gypsies and travellers. And those academics involved in the project continue to run various events with gypsies and travellers. And just the final project that I'm going to talk about involved a partnership between the local Spinal Injuries Association and academics from the School of Health Professionals. So the local Spinal Injuries Association wanted to evaluate the peer support services they provided to individuals in hospitals. So this is amongst people who were not admitted to specialist spinal injury rehabilitation centres. So the aim of the research was to evaluate the community peer support service provided by the Spinal Injuries Association to patients in hospital. And the service took the form of a community peer support officer who visited people in general hospitals who had recently received a diagnosis of spinal cord injury, providing them with practical and emotional support. So in terms of impacts, by helping to demonstrate the value of the community peer support service, the research findings really provided key evidence to underpin a successful bid for funding to extend the service across England. So again, the Community Research Award was really kind of instrumental in providing the kind of core evidence to demonstrate the success of this scheme and, you know, and successfully winning a much bigger bid to extend the service and benefit a much higher number of people. Yeah, so that's that was kind of, hopefully you found the introduction to the CRA Awards at the University of Plymouth useful. We have got some time for questions, but I know a lot of you have been putting them in the chat function. So
I think, Mel, a lot of the questions relate to, and it's great to see the questions, thank you. It'll help us with tomorrow what to cover in detail. So a lot of the questions are around how we match the community group ideas to the academics. So we'll go through that tomorrow in more detail about how that actually works. And I think it's very easy to say find community groups, but actually it might not be that easy to do. And how we went about trying to link with all the different charities, community groups, and there's probably 300-400 in Plymouth that we, you know, found that we weren't working with, that we didn't know about. So we can talk about how we did that as well to try and get to know our community. There's a question come in from Roxana. What's the budget? So we each project was around £10,000. So this was 10 years ago. So we put aside about £50,000 a year and gave £10,000 to each project. The money is actually, you know, went to the academic team to pay for the research, and then the community group got the research for free. So, you know, so the money is actually coming back into the university and paying for our own researchers. So it was a way of doing that and supporting, but then the community get the free research and the time from the academics and the connections. They also get to use our facilities, and they might use our equipment. So, and they get that closer relationship. So it seems beneficial to both sides, but that's roughly the budget we were working with. On top of that, we obviously had staff time. So we had a coordinator running the project as well, and some of our academics sat on panels, so there was some work there.
I will just, before we break for today, I will just mention some of the things that really struck strong, came across so importantly from today's session, and that is why universities should be bothered at all in developing such approaches. And to me, those are quotes to do better what we do already well. So build on our strengths, but tell communities that we're not just about theoretical, but also real life, finding solutions for real world problems. Create opportunities for both the communities that they may not know are out there for them, but also for our universities to connect better and be more applicable, relevant. What you said, Alice, find out who the communities are and to be able to service them better and be better grounded within the environment that our academic institutions exist. And help get the message out that universities are there not just for academia, but in fact for the wider community they're built for and amongst. So thank you so much. These seem such high-level messages to take back to university management and to convince all academia in how important it is that universities are better placed and more and demonstrate their relevance to their immediate social environments. I know that the next 2 days will be a lot busier, even more busier, now that we have the feel for what the Community Research Awards did for Plymouth University. It is remarkable to see some of those projects take on a life of their own and become huge research projects. I'm sure that any academic taking part in this session and any of the follow-up sessions and work that UniverCity will offer will be truly excited by these opportunities. So thank you so much.